Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! Сегодня у нас очередная лекция, и сегодня у нас FALA Atelier. Лекция пройдет на английском языке, поэтому, собственно, я переключусь на английский. So, hello, dear colleagues. Today we're having a lecture. Today we're having FALA Atelier, and we're happy that it is a wonderful opportunity to have them. We have Lera Samovic on behalf of FALA Atelier today. So, first thing I want to ask you is, could you introduce yourself and your bureau? So, let's go to it.
So, from our side as well, thank you very much for the invitation. We are always happy to do a lecture, and in those times, doing them online is, of course, a bit easier. But yeah, so my name is Lera. I am actually Russian, but I will be speaking in English just because it's safer, I guess, for everyone, because I haven't talked about architecture in Russian for a while, so this way I will be a bit more precise, I guess. FALA Atelier is maybe 7 or 8 years old. I think the office was founded in 2013 or 14, more or less. And yeah, we are a small practice based in Porto. We used to describe ourselves as a naive architecture practice, but I think now that the office grows older, this is maybe not the case anymore. We are working very much on maintaining the state of being naive, but yeah, sometimes the reality is a bit too tough. This is more or less it.
Great. How can you describe being naive?
I think in our case, let's say the naive architecture is something that kind of comes as the opposite of, let's say, like the boring practicality or the list of documents that we need to submit to the municipality, or the 10 kitchen cabinets that a client wants in their kitchen and things like that. So let's say it's a very childish maybe desire, or I don't want to use the word passion, but yeah, let's say an enthusiasm and an ambition to do architecture, and most importantly to enjoy it and to conceive it as a joyful practice.
Okay, we have collected some questions to lead us on, but actually you have a lecture to speak today, so maybe we can start with the lecture and continue with the questions after.
Yes, let's do it this way. I think I will try to be quick with the lecture so that we don't take 2 hours to do it. And maybe I will also try to address a few questions that you've sent. So this is the lecture is maybe quite specific because it is centered around one specific kind of drawing that we've discovered recently, or that we are kind of testing and trying out. And this drawing is somehow a very helpful tool and a very helpful lens to understand a series of projects and to look at them together, to compare them, and to see certain themes that are maybe repeating or appear once in a while for some reason. So the name of the lecture is Perimeters, Rules, and Exceptions, and I guess the title has to do with the fact that we do a lot of renovations. So in many cases, the outside perimeter of the building is something that is fixed, or sometimes it is about simply occupying the maximum footprint of the building. And then rules and exceptions comes as something that we that we impose ourselves. I guess rules is an obsession of ours. So behind every project, there is a very complex mental structure that we just have to build and then to follow and then to break it a little bit. And of course, this research and this specific kind of drawing happens from a series of references. In this specific case, I guess it was very much inspired by 60s, 70s, and 80s of Japanese architecture. So this is a drawing by Shinohara, then another drawing by Kitagawara, a strange composition with many layers by Aida, and finally the very one of the very first 3Ds that was done again by Shinohara and was actually photographed. So the drawing is literally an analog photograph of a computer screen, and this drawing was specifically fascinating for us for many reasons. Just the very idea of looking at a building kind of as a see-through, and then the fact that the 3D model, if you look at it, it's not very precise. It doesn't have simple things as, I don't know, wall thicknesses or window frames and things like that. So it's kind of a simplified version of a project, but at the same time, it let's say conveys the essential idea of the space. And I'm going to show 6 projects. They're all houses. They are houses of different scale and different typologies. Some of them, 4 of them are renovations, and then the 2 of them are new constructions. So this one is a house that was a renovation, and it was a project. I think it was maybe one of the first projects when let's say the interaction with the client was quite dense and also quite successful. I would say they were quite specific, and they were also quite interested in how to design a house or what they wanted from this house and so on. And I think as in every house or in every housing project, there's always an issue that comes first, which is, let's say, the division between the private and the public program. And I guess it is something that we have to address in every one of these projects. And it is also something that might almost define the project from the very beginning. So in this case, it was a family with 2 kids, and they wanted a clear separation between, let's say, the living, dining, kitchen area and all the bedrooms. And therefore, the plan and the project itself happened to be kind of a juxtaposition of the 2 layers. So if you look at the 2 plans, the ground floor is almost an empty space with one curved wall, which was designed as a way to, let's say, accommodate the staircase, smaller programs like bathroom storage and so on. And then the upper part is much more complicated. It's kind of let's say, a composition of strange geometries, but at the same time, all the little kinks and curves and diagonals, they actually happened for a reason, just because the plot was extremely narrow, and it was simply a challenge to, let's say, place the 2 bedrooms so that they're both facing the main facade. And so this image is one of those drawings that we are trying out lately. In a way, this drawing is an extrusion of the previous plan. So we try to, let's say, to maintain the idea of kind of this single line surface. So there are no thicknesses, and there is basically an envelope and a few surfaces and elements that are the definitive elements of a certain project. And in this case, the perimeter was specifically important because, as I mentioned, it's a very narrow building, and we basically demolished everything that was on the inside, and we had to work with a simple envelope, and then inside this envelope we put, let's say, a complex skeleton almost that defines the 2 levels. And in a way, I think the project can be described as those 2 systems that are on top of each other. And although although they are very different, I think the fact, or the thing that holds the project together is actually the materiality, and simply a set of elements and surfaces that are kind of treated in the same way. So there is the stripy wooden floor, there is the blue ceiling, there is a set of doors and openings that are that, let's say, in the end you read the project as a whole. And in this case, I think it is also interesting that the facade of the project was as well, the back facade of the project, because the front one, of course, had to be kept the same way. But the back facade happened to be actually the reflection of the inside system. So you have the very big opening on the ground floor, which kind of corresponds to the living room. And then you have kind of just a solid wall with one punched window, which reflects the upper level with all the bedrooms and bathrooms and so on. And then the thick cornice on top is something that hides the sloped roof behind it, and a series of beams and so on. And then, of course, there is the little playfulness to this elevation. So there is an off-centered access with the big column that actually holds a little balcony there, and then the cherry on top of the building, so a little blue circle as a way to finish the composition.
I was wondering what it is.
Yes. The circle itself? Yeah. Or, you mean in terms of materiality or in terms of its meaning?
I guess it's a kind of composition center, but to make the equilibrium, yeah. But what it is actually? What is the object to make it?
It's I think it's actually a metal circle that is held by a little metal frame. But I think in terms of how to explain these circles, we can define 10 different ways. But I think in the end they are they can mean different things, and we can describe it as a cherry on top, as something to finish the composition, as a kind of as something that reminds you of of a Renaissance sculpture that is usually put on top of the building, or it is also a reference to Swiss architect Peter Markley. So these circles, they happen many times and for many reasons. But I think we are somehow unable to finish the facade with a flat line, so there is always an object that lands on top of it. So the next project, also housing, but a very different kind of it. So this one is more of, let's say, collective, or you can even call it a student housing, because it is a set of very, very small apartments. And it actually has a reason, because in this case, the building itself, again, an existing building, but the typology that we had to work with in Portuguese, it's called ilha, so an island. But this is, let's say, an extremely poor social housing with very small units, with no bathrooms and so on. And also those houses in Porto, they are typically kind of inside backyards of other buildings. So those are also buildings that don't face the street somehow. So you have to get there through a little narrow corridor almost. So in this case, we had to again work within a certain perimeter. And in this case, the project, I think, is defined by a series of repetitions or sequences and so on and so forth. So let's say we had to adjust ourselves to the fact that we have 4 modules that are the same. Then we have one that is a little bit smaller and one that is a little bit bigger. And then again, it was, let's say, the game of how do we make it all consistent, and how do we make sense out of this structure. And essentially what we did, we conceived kind of a double height space inside each volume. So there is a small, let's say, ground floor level and a very narrow staircase that leads you to the, let's say, mezzanine kind of bedroom. And the 2 spaces, they simply defined by so one curved wall that happens on the ground floor, and then one diagonal that happens below the roof. And then in terms of the slightly bigger typology and smaller typology, let's say the geometries, they vary a bit, but the principle essentially is the same. And then with a few touches of color, we decide to emphasize the slope truth because it has a big impact on the space. And then also regarding the facade, it was the question of how to control these big amounts of openings, and how to approach the slope proof. So in the end, it was also the same as on the inside. It was kind of those layers of repeated elements. So we introduced the kind of very present stripy door, and then the roof is done as a very thin metal sheet, and then the roof is also held by a series of very thin metal columns, which kind of provides you a little covered area along the perimeter. So those are the two images. And I guess one of the luxuries of this project is that the two houses, they are standing around the big courtyard. But yeah, the spaces on the inside are extremely small, but yet I think they take advantage of the high roof and of the complex volume that happens inside every apartment. The next project is it's actually not housing. I think it is more of a hotel. So in this case, there was, let's say, no need to design a kitchen inside every space. There is more of a collective kitchen dining room area on the ground floor. This is also a renovation, but in this case, it's not in Porto. It's in a town nearby, which is called Amarante, and it's a taller building. It's a building, I think, with even bigger amount of irregularities that we had to control, that we had to work around. In this case, it was also the existing staircase that happens here, but then it turns around in weird ways. So let's say the inside space, even when it was cleaned completely from all the walls and partitions, it was still very somehow very uneven. And I think also the goal was to let's say accommodate 3 at least bedrooms on each level, 3 or 2, yeah, depending on the floor. But in this case, we were somehow experimenting a lot with the, let's say, with a set of those very let's say, I don't know, geometries that are both blunt but also very intricate somehow. They happen for 2 reasons, I guess. The one is just the kind of banal struggle of trying to figure out the space of placing it all together, and sometimes the wall simply cannot go straight because it has to face the wall between the 2 windows that are already there. So a lot of these kinks and small moments, they actually happen for kind of trying to put it all together. But at the same time, we are, of course, after a space that has, let's say, certain qualities, or the space that has certain richness and complexity and so on and so forth. So I think both aspects, they are very much at play. And in the very center of each level, there is a big concrete column, which is actually something that holds the entire project together. So again, this drawing is an attempt to explain it. And if you look at the plan again, so all the doors of all the bedrooms, they are always attached to the column. So this way, it's kind of the, let's say, the central element that kind of introduces the system of the entire project, and the column is not just a column. The column is actually a very tall chimney that comes from the fireplace that is on the ground level in this collective living room. So the column is actually hollow on on the inside. So another project, another house, but in this case, this is not a renovation. This is a new construction. But again, speaking of the notion of the perimeter, in this case, the footprint is again, we follow all the alignments, so it's the maximum space that we can occupy. So although we built this perimeter from ground zero, it is still kind of predefined. And in this case, the project is a very let's say simple grid of 2 lines. So it has 3 levels. And again, you can see at the very center of the space, there is a column. So the 2 projects, the previous one and this one, they are actually very much related, but at the same time a bit different. Again, speaking of the, let's say, the division between the private and public, the ground floor, the space that is facing the garden is, of course, the kitchen, living room, all of those things. And then above, you need, again, as much bedrooms as you want, all the bathrooms and the circulation spaces. So the 2 levels above, they are the same. They are divided into 4 rooms. And I think in this project, we were also after this idea of, let's say, not defining each space too much. So in a way, they are almost interchangeable, if you can say so. So the column in the center of the building is actually, let's say, a fictional element, because it is a column that in fact does not touch the floor on the ground floor. It's again a column with a very complex shape. I don't know if I have the photo. Yeah, so it's this column. It has a very complex shape, but the shape is actually it was actually designed so that all the doors can close properly towards that column. And again, speaking of the 2 projects, so the one that I showed just before, if in this case all the doors, they are opening, so they are attached to the column. In the other project, you can open all the doors and then you can face the column as a, let's say, as a freestanding element. But yeah, again, it becomes, let's say, something that let's say, holds the project. So it's the central element that happens in a very, let's say, in a very abstract, otherwise space. This project is, let's say, is a less conventional kind of house, because it was not, let's say, the space itself when it was purchased by the client. It is not meant to be a house. It is one of these commercial spaces on the ground floor so you access it from the street, and then you don't have enough light because the space is maybe a bit too narrow, and you only have windows on both sides of the very narrow volume. So therefore, we had to face a few challenges because of that. And if you look at the plan, so what we were trying to achieve is, let's say, a very continuous space on both levels, so that you can connect the 2 sides. And the program in this case was not very specific. So let's say, the house itself is not following the, let's say, the traditional meaning or understanding of a house. So in this case, it's 2 large spaces, which can be anything: a living room, a bedroom, and so on and so forth. And then you have on both levels kind of this block of programs that are conceived again as a series of complex geometries. And in this case, they also happen for 2 reasons, and as I was specifying before. But again, if you look at let's say, at the black perimeter, you see a lot of kinks and inconsistencies that we want, of course, to remove. And then there is always the existing staircase, which is a given, so you have to work around it. And then the two black columns, they're also a structure that comes from above. So every project, let's say, has a series of limitations, which become both, let's say, they challenge the project in a way, because you need to solve those things. But at the same time, yeah, they are, of course, a strange limitation that happens in the very beginning. So in this case, as I said, the project is kind of two two levels of those two very continuous rooms, but the project itself actually culminates in a garden, but the garden is conceived as almost again as a room again, so as an outside space that has a very strong presence. It has a stripy cornice, and it is a room that has basically no ceiling, and those are the two images, so of seeing through the space and the backyard, which is also a room in this case.
So the one question that comes to my mind, first thing I see the plan, is how do you cope with the sharp angle that is formed with that curve?
So in this, I think this was the project. I think actually, maybe after I finish, we can go on the website. But in this case, in case of this project, we had two corners. So this corner and that one, and I think in both cases it was either a piece of marble that we put a bit in front of the corner so that it doesn't get too narrow, because it's impossible to access it and to paint it its own. But I think it's either a piece of marble or either a piece of mirror. So it is sharp corners are, let's say, they are problematic for a reason. No, I mean we of course we adore the spatial effects that they have, but we don't lie to ourselves saying that they are comfortable. There is a problem of two walls coming next to each other, and we have to deal with it. And sometimes it's a piece of marble, sometimes it's a piece of mirror or a piece of wood. It depends, but there is a solution.
So if there is a sharp angle, there's not. It doesn't mean there shouldn't be one. Okay.
So I have two more projects. This one is. So it has a similar initial condition. So the space is not meant to be a house again. So it's one of these commercial spaces on the ground floor that was a shop or an office, or sometimes it is even a car parking garage. And in this case, the project, I think it is again, the project is challenging, let's say, our idea of a house. And I think in this case, the final result was it was both, let's say, extreme and abstract. So in the end, when the project was finished, all of us concluded that the space can actually be anything. It doesn't have, let's say, the very persistent kind of houseness, let's say. So it could almost be an office or something of that kind. And I know that I always talk about certain, let's say, limitations and inconsistencies that a space have, but I think in case of those small renovations, the project is very much driven by those things. So I think it always happens as kind of as an intersection of two things. So there is the very boring fact of, I don't know, having beams in the ceiling that you don't want to have, or having a column popping out of the wall, and things like that. So let's say the side that is the limitation or the inconvenience, and then there is the second side, which is our intense ambition to make the most out of every space. And then every project happens kind of as an intersection of both. And in case of this particular space, it was it was actually conceived by, if you look at the plan, by three walls. So one of them is a curved wavy wall, one of them is a stepped surface, and one of them is a fragment of a circle. And so accordingly, you have a kitchen, you have a bedroom, and you have a small bathroom. And when we thought about how to call this project, actually we called it Fireworks in White, because although the space is very complex, in the end every surface is painted in white, but then a lot of those elements that populate it, and those are very simple elements also, they are a door, a mirror, a surface that is painted in pink, or a column. So the space, although it's very, so the space that is both complex and abstract, kind of it becomes populated by those elements. And this is the photo of the inside, and you see that the project has, I mean, it almost has a very small facade that is facing the street. And the last one. So this project is also a proof that we are growing in scale a little bit. And this one happened also not in Porto. Again, in a town half an hour from Porto that is called Trilhas. And in this case, we had to build 5 apartments. I mean, you can almost call this typology a set of townhouses, but I think in this case, it's 5 townhouses that pretend to be one building, because I think we were very, let's say, very much interested in keeping these 5 houses or 5 volumes as one. And again, we were very, let's say, excited about kind of defining the system, introducing a set of kind of grids and dimensions and measurements, so that the kind of the entire structure is so that it makes sense to us, let's say. And in this case, you can see that the perimeter is a very kind of broken rectangle. So one corner is pulled very much, which is again the maximum built footprint, because clients, of course, they want lots of square meters, the maximum amount. And in this case, the building is built from scratch. There was nothing before. And in this case, the grid is actually defined by so if you look at the upper floor, the grid is very much defined by the spacing of the bedrooms above. And then when you project it on the ground floor, it gets a bit more unstable in a way, because we were also trying to conceive typologies that are not repetitive. So in some cases, it's a bigger apartment, in some cases, it's a bit smaller. And then the exception actually happens when you need to introduce either a bathroom or a small storage space, and so on and so forth. So on this drawing, you see the blue line, which defines the bedroom and, let's say, the division between the 5 apartments. And then the exception happens, when a smaller space appears. And again, a series of drawings just for you and for us to understand this project a bit better, and to almost, let's say, see it as a set of layers that are happening on top of each other. There's also the grid of columns, which again is an important element for us, because it kind of it has almost a totemic presence in the center of a room. So then there is the kind of in between or in the middle of the house, the pink layer of smaller exceptional programs, and then there is let's say, a makeup or I mean, that's a not serious way to call it, but yeah, then there is a series of elements and ornaments that are applied on top of the building to compose the four facades. And this is actually, I mean, this sentence works as a conclusion of this lecture. It was a text, so it was not written by us. It was a text that was written about us by Tibor Gianelli, but he somehow he managed to sum up this, let's say, this desire for conceiving a system, or this, let's say, enthusiasm for rules and exceptions and grids and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to read it. So speaking about our project, he says that this framework is projected vertically over all the stories, defining a virtual raster that permeates the whole design. It is this Eisenmanian structure that gives the design a syntactic and profound reason that goes beyond the perceivable effects of the surfaces. Yeah, I think this is it. Let's do the questions. or maybe I'll keep the lecture if we
Yeah.
need to come back to some images. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think it was a very inspiring one. Raison d'être. That was great. Okay, so let's jump to the questions, and maybe we shall skip or pass some of them quite quickly, as far as they were already addressed in some previous lectures of yours. But anyway, we have to ask them. So I have some sets of questions. And the first set is on the freedom of creativity and your approach to design. So let's start. How did you come to what you are doing, considering the means and approaches, the style which you developed, and what is the creative freedom as you see it?
So I think because let's say the office is first of all a collective practice. So I think it's also very different from a format when you have, let's say, one master working alone on a building. So I think in our case it's a lot about a dialogue. But the more I think about it, I mean, also when I came to FALA for the first time, I think our common language, or the reason why we understood each other so well, I think, was the fact that we were excited about the same set of references, or same architects, same offices, and same names. And I think in the very beginning, it was the connecting element that influenced a lot our ambition and our approach. Maybe I think we are not very comfortable with the word style, also because I think we are not after a certain style, and we prefer to call it a language. But of course, we understand that there is a certain, let's say, there is a certain personality that happened and that maybe describes FALA. But I think for us, it is also something that we are trying to constantly challenge. So we don't want, in a way, to repeat ourselves too much. So this is something that we always have to question and to push even further.
I guess Filipe has said in one lecture, has once said that you do architecture that wasn't asked for.
This is he means the very I think this is maybe let's start with the fact that maybe the profession of an architect is very romanticized, and I think especially in our office, Philip is the one who has to deal with all the clients a lot, and I think he's the one suffering from that very much, because first of all, they don't come to us because they know FALA or because they've seen our projects and so on. So they usually need an architect to sign a paper to deliver to the municipality and things like that. So it is very much, let's say, kind of an educational process of working with the client, of introducing certain things to them, and so on and so forth. And it is, of course, a continuous struggle of them wanting all the walls to be beige, and us insisting on white. And it's, let's say, it's every house that we design or every building that we do. I think in a way the client, they want a certain set of things, and then they find these things in a project, and those are usually very practical moments of, I don't know, having a bathroom next to the bedroom. And then I think the rest of the project is fortunately up to us, and then it happens as a as a collision of the two. So yeah, every project is a small miracle in this sense.
So you have abandoned the commercial super realistic renders.
I mean, I can show you some renders. We do a lot of renders, but
I mean those hyper realistic that all.
But yeah, we simply don't know how to do them. I mean, we also don't. I think the collage.
Those that ArcDL is full of.
Because let's say I think we are very, very known for the collages, but but I think lately the collage is something that is not very. No, it's not this lecture. I think lately the collages, they are not very present in our practice, and those terrible renders that we produce, they are taken over, but I cannot remember where I had them. Lenses of tools, they're here. Sorry, I'm just gonna show you them as an example. We do a lot of those quick renders, and I think they matter a lot, especially at the, let's say, at the phase of the execution project. So they help us to solve a lot of details and to test the materiality. So yeah, those are nice and beautiful collages, but those are the renders that we also produce a lot. And to us, they are just the very fast tool to see how it's going to be. And yeah, and I think they look more like a computer game from the 90s. And I think it depends on the, let's say, on the client or on the audience. Some clients, they prefer to look at the render, others, they don't understand it, and for them it's not precise enough. So maybe they're more, it's more easy for them to look at the collage. And yeah, but we are not against renders. We're just very bad at them.
Oh, luckily, I guess. So, how is this kind of presentation perceived by your clients in general? You already mentioned it, but anyway.
I think lately because I think we tried a lot of things. Drawings are usually not understandable at all. Renders might also be a bit too scary or too confusing. So I think for us, the most helpful tool lately is actually a model. So a physical paper model, which we do. So in the beginning, we do like 1 to 200 small models of the volumes, so that, let's say, it's easier to understand the building within the context. And then later on, we do a 1 to 50 model. And I think those are the most helpful tools when it comes to the client.
Speaking of architecture, let's somehow turn back. And what does it consist of? And of which means are more significant to you? Let's say wall, column, chimney, floor, ceiling, etc., tectonics, plan, and all those.
I think I don't think we can choose one and say that this is our favorite. But I think if I reflect back on how we work, so I would say that when the project is only starting, we are very much preoccupied with plans. I think every project starts with a plan, and the first thing to do is to convince ourselves that the plan is good, that the plan is working. Let's say while one is working on the plan, maybe some volumetric tests can happen, but I think the plan to us is the drawing somehow, but maybe it will also change. I think lately we are trying also to get excited about sections as well, but yeah, I think plan is the beginning of everything. And then speaking of elements, I think we also a couple of years ago maybe we started introducing this idea of tropes. And by tropes, yeah, we mean either elements. It also has, let's say, certain aspects of materiality, or it can be about the composition of the space. And those tropes, I think we consider them our tools somehow. I mean, there is no definitive answer yet, but I think just for us, for the office, it's an ongoing discussion on, let's say, on how we conceive a project. Do we still conceive a project as, let's say, as a whole, or is the project maybe a very fragmented entity? Because I think in our experience, in our practice, again, because we work a lot with small projects or with renovations, so I think in this case, the scale and kind of the initial condition, they matter a lot, and they become very present. And I think simply when you have to work in a small space, I think moments like a door handle, a door itself, or the marble counter of the kitchen, they actually matter a lot, and then they happen to be those elements that conceive the space. So but at the same time, I think we're also very fond of what can be called mistakes and accidents. All of those columns that are not aligned, or column that doesn't touch the ceiling, or column that doesn't touch the floor. So I think there is also an aspect of playfulness, and there is this, let's say, grammar of mistakes that we are still exploring. But I would, yeah, sorry.
When you started to talk about those different elements, I thought maybe there was some kind of, let's say, a central element approach, but in the end I came to think that it's just about the love that you send to those kind of elements in the end. Broken, I guess, something like broken angle. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we are. I guess this can be easily explained by our exotic set of references that we are constantly expanding. So last year we did a semester with our students on Japanese houses from 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we drew with our students 250 houses, and we've discovered so many things, and it's just so I guess this would be one explanation of that desire to break some rules. But then I think it's also the banal context, or the banal space that we have to work with. This is also let's say something for us that we have to challenge, that we have to disturb a bit by misplacing things.
I have to reference some of the past lectures of yours, and ask a question on the difference between Caesar and Sumta. Which of them are closer to the practice?
I mean, when it comes to, I don't think we have a fascination for Zumthor. I think he, or at least to us, he's in a completely different context. So I guess we imagine him, let's say, working in a perfect reality of perfect contractors and enormous budgets when everything can be allowed. So I think it's just very difficult to relate to him in a sense. And Caesar to us is of course important and present, but I also think that we don't have an extreme Caesar fascination, and I think this can also be explained because Philip and Anna, they studied in Porto at FAUP. And I think they had way too much Caesar during their student years. So I think they want to kind of to take a break from that. But when it comes to Caesar, I think we are, or at least to me personally, the most interesting projects are those houses that are built in end of 60s, then 70s, and maybe beginning of 80s. So I like a very also specific, almost let's say almost postmodern version of Caesar, which I think is not very popular. So it's not the white poetic Caesar. It's a strangely different kind of Caesar, which I also discovered when I moved to Portugal and started looking closely at things. But yeah, between those two, definitely Caesar is the one who is closer to us.
Okay, and so let's move on to the next section. Is about Clara. It's about color. This is my favorite. What is white?
So white is a color. That's a first, because I think some people don't consider it to be a color. But I think to us, white is a way, let's say, to erase the existing condition, or at least to kind of to take the space to the ground zero, to even out all the imperfections. And again, this has to do with many renovations that we were working with and are working with. But I think it is also it is almost a background then for all of those elements to appear. I think in a way a project for us can be seen as a canvas, and I think the white then provides the perfect material for that. But I would say that, or at least I'm raising this question at the office many times when we start thinking about the interior. I'm always asking, when are we going to do a wall that is not white? Because we are already trying, let's say, a ceiling with a different color and so on and so forth. But I think there will be a day when we abandon white as well. So I'm excited about that.
Which are the principles that you organize the interior space in your projects?
I think the lecture that I did was maybe a bit of an answer to that. But I think it also depends on the either. So if it's a renovation, then I think it's about finding a certain rule or a certain system within the given perimeter, and it can be either, I don't know, a grid of structure or a grid of walls that kind of marks the spaces. So I think it is always about, let's say, it's always about having the two sides of so having the system and then having some exceptions in that system. Somehow I think also we can never do a fully orthogonal plan because it's just it is disturbing for us. But maybe again one day we will arrive at that as well. But if it's a new building, I think here we also try to let's say leave our comfort zone, maybe, because I think the first two houses that we built from scratch, they were, if you look at the plan, they are perfect squares. So when we started to work on the third house, one of the things we told ourselves, let's not make it a square, just because it's the I would say it's the easiest, and it's the, let's say, the figure that makes sense and that calms you down somehow. But I think it's about because we work mostly with houses. I think it's the plan comes somehow as a reflection of the private and public dilemma. So as a way to figure out the two spaces, and in our late houses, I think we are also trying to break the volume to be. We're still learning to be a bit more free and a bit more liberated when it comes to the actual volume of the building, because I think we don't know how to do it quite well because we started with the interiors. So this is something that we are still learning how to do. And now at this moment it's a runaway from doing a cube or a square.
So let's move on. You've already began to say about all those things I'm going to ask you. So, fun versus serious. How do you train your creativity? And as far as you teach students, as I know, how do you get them to think out of the box, and how do you get yourself to think out of the box?
With the students, I think it's quite consistent in a sense that we don't have a lot of experience in teaching. We only did a few years of that, but I think every semester we start with a bit of a research, and I think this research during this research we try to introduce those references that we find interesting and that we find challenging for them as well. And I think through that references, students, they learn a bit. They of course try to look at a lot at our project, but our goal, let's say, is never to make a FALA project as an outcome of the semester. But I think it simply comes out of a dialogue as well. But I think students they are surprisingly keen on trying strange things, and I think they so for instance the last semester in Lisbon, students of Filipe, they were designing houses, and they are second-year students, and I did a few classes with them, and I think in my experience it was they almost went on the side that is a bit too crazy. So I think we were more learning about how to control in the end the craziness, and how to find the balance within all of those crazy geometries. But yeah, I think they are very keen, and after looking at 3 or 5 houses in the beginning of the semester, they are excited about trying things.
So how I don't know if any of Portuguese schools or as far as you come from Moscow Architectural School, it's very surprising that you have. I guess it's quite let's say seamless process of migrating from Evgenias's course to those kind of things that you are doing at FALA. I guess those kind of let's call them unusual. So I'm not sure if Portuguese schools have these some, let's say, kind of rigid frames that we have in Moscow in our classical school.
I think in terms of, I can only, so because Filipe and Anna, they were studying in FAUP, and I think they, of course it was a good education, but I think FAUP is very much centered on CISA and Soto de Mora. So I think essentially the school is also a bit conservative in a sense that I think the current set of professors that they have, it was the same for many years. So I think maybe not enough young blood is coming into the school, but yeah, I think it's a bit Portuguese centered somehow, and yeah, the names that they repeat all the time is Cisa Soto de Mora, then it's Corbusier, Rossi, and Grassi, and so it's very, I guess, yeah, it's very classical education. So without, let's say, without challenging things too much, but yeah, I think it also has to do with the simply with how they do the project. I also understood that they never, I think they don't do like the presentation of a project when the semester is over. So it is kind of simply put on the wall and then they don't talk about it. Then they always work in models. So I think there are certain things that that might be a bit of a limitation, but I mean, yeah, then it depends. So I think to Filipe and Anna, it was definitely at some point the trip to Japan that they did for the Erasmus project, and yeah, and just the simple fact of being curious.
Anyways, those people in school that sets the rules, are they okay with those crazy things they do?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's for me. It's hard, I guess, to speak. That should be Filipe and Anna answering the question. But I think one of the funny things that is said about FALA is that so in Portugal, everyone says that FALA is not Portuguese at all, but then outside of Portugal, everyone says that FALA is very Portuguese. So this is one of the peculiar comments that we don't know how to process.
So what they call FALA as Portuguese and not Portuguese? What they mean?
I think, I mean, hard to tell. I guess so coming from inside of Portugal, I guess we are just not Caesar-like or not Soto de Mora-like. So this is a no for Portugal. But I guess then from outside of Portugal, we have a lot of there's a lot of whiteness and I don't know, there is the lightness and the color, playfulness. So I would assume that those are the Portuguese aspects. But again, yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, if we kind of stay by the theme of Portuguese and not Portuguese, how is the work of the practice is influenced by the culture, history, tradition, and overall genius lot of the place you are working in and for?
I think there is a very direct influence in terms of let's say having to work with existing buildings or existing typologies. Then there is also the simple questions of, let's say, materiality and our contractors and let's say the supplies, or I don't know how to call that. But of course we let's say we have to work inside a certain context that has its own let's say rules. We use a lot of marble, for instance, which is in Portugal not a luxurious thing at all. Marble is actually extremely cheap, or we use a lot of tiles. And here in Portugal, it's also quite common to have tiles on the facade of the building. And then again, tiles is, I don't know, one of the cheapest materials when you have to work within a small budget. So I think in terms of these questions of materials and typologies, I guess it has a very direct influence. But I think when it comes to a context per se, I don't think we are very interested in that. I think the context, or at least in many cases, our project is located in somewhere in a suburbia, so the context is just not exciting at all. And I think in many cases we try to design so the building itself somehow as an object that is gonna maybe challenge this context, or that is gonna produce a certain change on the streetscape and so on and so forth. Well, this image is very helpful in this case. But yeah, I think we don't romanticize the context. We are just not interested in that somehow. And even in I don't know, in many cases, I start to work in a project without going there once. So it's always an object that is landed there in a way.
So let's move on to the practice section. What do you start any project with? And what is the reaction of people, municipality, to your courageous and bright proposals?
Municipalities. I mean, I'm not the right person to answer the municipality questions, but I think let's say we already know what we can or cannot do, and so one of the funny moments. Let's say if you have to renovate a building, there is always the street facade, which we know that it has to be preserved. Or you can maybe change the tiles or paint the window frames. But the back facade is something that no one questions or no one cares. So we basically had a series of projects where, let's say, those back facades, they were our playground in a way. So it's one of the accepted conditions that the street facade you keep it, but to us it is a part of the project. But then we are, I guess, just not as interested in that. But then I think in terms of municipalities, I think they are mainly interested in the kind of in the elevation of the street, in the very specific tone of the paint or the tile that you're going to apply. Sometimes they might not like the color, but I think in terms of plans or in terms of spatial organization, it is again about, let's say, following the very basic rules of designing the proper handicap bathroom or having your corridors with the right width. So I think as long as we follow these rules, all the sharp corners, they can happen. No one questions them.
Okay. How do you justify your approach to architecture to the public, client?
Do we justify it? I'm not sure, but I think with the client, it depends, I think, very much, because also many clients, they are simply, they are not interested in architecture. So I don't think there is a question of us justifying it. It's really about, let's say, delivering the practical aspects that they ask for.
They don't ask you about why.
Do
you make such form?
No, it's really, I think they sometimes they bring, let's say, a reference, which is usually, I don't know, some house of some neighbor that they've seen, or some images from Pinterest. But I think in many cases they just either they don't understand the image or the drawing, or they are mostly worried about, let's say, the budget or the area or having the 2 bedrooms. So it's really kind of us doing our thing and then them asking for their thing. But I think lately we've also been lucky to have a few clients that actually came to FALA because of FALA, and working with them was a beautiful kind of challenge, because we were not afraid, let's say, to present to them the most extreme proposals, but then they would tell us, no, but make it even more extreme. So I think it's quite different. But I think there is. It is the easiest for architects to talk with other architects. So I think when an architect talks to a client, it's always so difficult, and we have to adjust our vocabulary almost to explain things.
Well, the first thing that strikes me when I see your works is how do those clients actually tell you that they want this? Really, it's quite a fascinating thing that in Portugal there are people that are able to somehow perceive this kind of architecture, this kind of projects. That's great.
So I think I should also, we also have clients that allow us, so let's say there is a type of a client that don't care about architecture, then there is the opposite type who cares a lot, but then there is also the in-between type who is an investor type. So they allow us kind of an absolute freedom as long as we again provide, let's say, the right amount of apartments in square meters. So they are interested in investing money and then in selling it. And I think this was also as kind of a very boring, let's say, element of our practice. But we had a few of those clients in the beginning of our career, and this was a great way for us to, let's say, to have this freedom and to try certain things and to develop a certain language.
Great. What is the structure of your office? And do you work with other designers, e.g. from Russia?
We of course always say that the office is like it has the horizontal structure and no hierarchy, but I think of course all of us in the end we have different responsibilities, and depending on, so for instance in my case, because I don't speak proper Portuguese yet it's not easy for me to let's say to deliver a full execution project. So therefore, for instance, I work mostly on the concept phase. Then I'm also participating in teaching, and so let's say English-based things are arriving at my door. But then so we have 3 Portuguese collaborators who work actively on the execution part. So they are the absolute masters of execution. But at the same time, we try to mix things up a bit. If they need help, I try to help. Then also they work on concept phase. So let's say all of us has a kind of a fixed set of responsibilities, also depending on our stronger skills. But then, so the things just don't get too repetitive and boring. We try to shift it all up a bit.
Have you ever thought about working abroad? I mean, making projects in other countries, but Portugal.
We did. What did we do? So we did one. It was kind of a temporary pavilion, but it was a pavilion for a music festival. So for playing music and for partying, and we did it in Belgium. So yeah, almost in Brussels, in the suburbs of Brussels. Did we do? Maybe we did something else. I'm not sure, but yeah. So a couple of small projects happened, which was. But again, this pavilion, it was more of a workshop. So we built it together. With architecture students. We are doing some competitions. So also in Belgium, also in Switzerland. But let's see. So far, no. But we are, I think, very open to the idea. Although I guess, we understand that it's going to be very, very challenging.
So let's move on. Could you tell about the first order that was asked the bureau, and where did it come from? I think the very first project, it was actually just Philip and Anna doing this. It was a small kiosk for a big student party that they have here in Porto in May. So it's really when all the universities come together, and so the small kiosk was a bar, and I think it was a competition that they participated and they won. So this was project number 1. Then the second, it was the second project. The first project was actually the exhibition that we did in Lisbon. I mean, it is let's say semi-project because it is mostly an exhibition, but it was
it was a scaffolding structure that was built inside an exhibition space. And that exhibition was, I think, an outcome because Filipe and Ana, they lived in Japan for a year almost. And after they came back, they did a research on the building where they lived, so the Nakajin Tower. And and I guess at some point the curator of the museum was interested in exhibiting that research. So this was the first project, the exhibition, the second, the bar. And then the third project, which is already the proper project, is an apartment in Lisbon. And I think that apartment happened because of the client who saw the exhibition from FALA, and she decided to, because she's not Portuguese, so she was trying to find an office in Portugal, and because of that exhibition, she found us.
Great. So of course we do have some questions on the internship, and what are the requirements?
It's simple. I think we receive a lot of portfolios, but I think usually it's Philip looking at the portfolios, but there is never enough time to look at it properly. Maybe, I guess there is a season of portfolios arriving, which I guess is more of April, May. Maybe this would be the time when we look at the portfolios a bit more carefully, because we try to find the next intern. But I think when it comes to us, it's really just the portfolio has to catch your attention in the first 3 seconds. Otherwise, it's closed, and that's it. So that's the only rule.
Thank you. Students ask to tell you they say just tell them that they are the masterminds. I really adore this. So thank you for your answers. And maybe we have somebody in the chat in our maybe somebody from the conference. Anyone? Okay. You have, I guess.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Is it principle to speak in English because I'm not so good in it?
Нет, мы можем говорить по-русски.
Отлично. Прекрасно. Очень было приятно слушать на английском, но по-русски мне проще сформулировать мысли. Скажите, пожалуйста, а вы давно работаете, да, в FALA Atelier?
Да, это идет 5-й год.
Угу. А я правильно поняла, что вы учились у Евгения Викторовича?
Да.
Вы закончили у него. Это был Мархи, да?
Я училась у него в Мархи 3-й и 4-й курс, и как раз когда мы заканчивали бакалавр, случился марш, и поэтому мы все пошли в марш, и я была первым выпуском марша. Да.
Ага, понятно, здорово. То есть это последний выпуск Евгения Викторовича в Мархи.
Да.
Последний не оконченный.
Но вот это сочетание Евгений Викторович и FALA Atelier — это потрясающе. Я считаю, что это просто судьба какая-то.
Мне кажется, это прям прямой курс такой.
Понимаешь, но на самом деле это потрясающе круто, потому что то, что они делают, это абсолютно не то, что делают в институте в родном.
Да, но это очень похоже на то, что преподает Евгений Викторович, и то, что делают его выпускники. Я со многими знакома, поэтому стиль такой же, и концептуальность проектов такая же.
Меня вот эта отвязность совершенно подкупает дичайшим образом. Я прямо смотрю, я думаю, как это люди делают так абсолютно свободные вещи.
Вот как Лера говорила, я не на 100% абсолютно все поняла, но на 90% примерно поняла. И как Лера говорила, все зависит от заказчика. То есть насколько он... Я так понимаю, что у вас просто спонсоры какие-то, да, прямо это слово было упомянуто. Что это просто люди, которые говорят, делайте. Я не знаю, как вы их там...
они с ними тоже, мне кажется, есть какие-то системы ограничений, но в целом это, конечно, гораздо больше свободы, чем если человек хочет построить дом для себя. То есть им
Главное, чтобы не
безразличны многие
упало.
вещи. Да, да.
Да, это очень красиво там. А я еще хотела спросить, я не очень поняла второй проект, где розовые такие треугольнички. Я просто не
Мгм.
поняла на английском, это, это что, стенки или, я не поняла, деление. Какая-то была фраза, что мало оставалось пространства для жилья, но это не страшно, потому что... И вот дальше я не поняла, почему это не страшно.
Да, потому что это изначально здание, это, в общем, специально, это местная типология, это было жилье, в котором, так сказать, живет, не знаю, живут очень... Вот сейчас все начинает звучать странно по-русски, но, в общем, это очень дешевое жилье, в котором очень плохие условия, в котором нет условно ванной комнаты внутри дома. То есть это, мне кажется, они до сих пор существуют, но в Порту их, наверное, уже стараются от них избавиться. И, в общем, и эти дома, они часто стоят внутри блока, то есть у них нет улицы, ты заходишь к ним через какую-то арку, через какой-то коридор. И, собственно, эта странная типология была основой проекта в том плане, что она разделена на много очень маленьких ячеек. И внутри этой ячейки, что мы постарались сделать, мы сделали там 2 этажа, ну или то, что называется мезонин, поскольку там была скатная крыша, и пространство было достаточно высоким, и, собственно, мне кажется, из-за высокого пространства сама ячейка, сама квартира, она становится от этого больше и сложнее. И розовый треугольник, это на самом деле был розовый изнутри, скатная крыша покрашена в розовый цвет, и поскольку это пересечение квадратного пространства диагональной стеной, то остается только розовый треугольник.
Окей.
Гениально.
А для кого все-таки предполагается это жилье? Это что, для студентов, одиночек?
В этом случае это тоже был
Юзер пользователь.
инвестор, то есть он строил не для себя, он строил для того, чтобы их либо сдавать в аренду, либо продать, но сейчас там живут, мне кажется, в основном студенты, да, и молодые ребята, и мне кажется, и самый там, получается, 6 мини-квартир, и самую большую, мне кажется, уже купили, но в маленькие, конечно, снимаются, и там, да, там живут молодые ребята.
Я когда
Спасибо.
смотрел лекции Филиппа, у него была такая фраза, он говорил о том, что мы не хотим говорить о социальной архитектуре, и типа мы делаем гедонистическую архитектуру. Но при этом как бы проекты, на самом деле, очевидно, что они достаточно, можно назвать, что они социальные, в общем. То есть это такие очень недорогие проекты для людей, которые, ну, и они, причем это какой-то, каждый проект фактически это, что меня в этом очень здорово подкупает, это фактически такое художественное высказывание. Вот.
Ну, мне кажется, да, социальность, она случается сама по себе. Нас, например, не знаю, нас все время спрашивают либо про социальную архитектуру, либо про экологичную архитектуру. И мне кажется, ни первый, ни второй аспект нас совершенно не интересуют, но они, но мы знаем, что они есть. Они происходят. Мы, не знаю, мы думаем о том, как будет устроено водоснабжение в доме и так далее, какие-то энергоэффективные штуки, они случаются, но нам это совершенно не интересно, нам интересны другие вещи. Ну, то есть, да, наверное, в первую очередь это художественный аспект, это сама по себе архитектура и все, что с этим связано, и пространство.
Я не могу не задать вопрос, на самом деле, вот если вот все-таки про социальное. Я читал про историю Португалии, насколько я понимаю, там был длительный период достаточно жесткого строя, который сменился, ну, причем такой он был консервативный, который сменился как бы поворотом в сторону социально ориентированного, социалистического в большей степени.
Это про 20 век?
Да, это про текущий момент. И насколько я понимаю, что, в общем-то, в обществе Португалии достаточно... Я не был там никогда, мне поэтому интересно.
И я не была.
Да, но теперь у нас есть повод съездить, как бы. Помимо моей любви к Алваресиза. Вот. Там, насколько я понимаю, есть достаточно сильная как бы такая вот социальная повестка. Насколько я могу судить из политики, из того, что я читал, насколько это вообще в обществе проявляется. Ну, это просто, это не совсем связано с архитектурой, понятно.
Мне кажется, сейчас уже это не настолько заметно, но очень интересный был момент как раз в 2014 году, когда я приехала в Порту первый раз. Это, мне кажется, была еще Португалия до того, как ее захватили туристы, потому что в Порту элементарно, мне кажется, сюда еще не летал Ryanair, например, и когда я ходила по улице, не знаю, на центральной площади, условно, большинство зданий стояли пустые с разбитыми окнами. И в какой-то момент вот случилась самая дешевая авиакомпания, которая называется Ryanair, и сюда хлынул поток туристов, и плюс в тот момент недвижимость тоже была просто чрезвычайно дешевая, и потом появились инвесторы, потом появились Airbnb, потом появились гостиницы, открылась куча ресторанов с смузи и авокадо-тостами. То есть и сейчас, сейчас опять странный момент, потому что COVID, но вот, мне кажется, буквально за 2-3 года Порту изменился невозможно. Ну и мне кажется, вот этот социальный аспект, он, наверное, пропал просто потому, что все пытаются открыть Airbnb, сдать квартиру, построить гостиницу или что-то еще. Но в целом, наверное, да. Но это, мне кажется, еще было довольно... Это было еще не навязано со стороны политики, но то есть это было что-то, что, так сказать, шло со стороны государства. Мне кажется, сейчас этого тоже, наверное, не происходит. Хотя недавно мы участвовали в конкурсе в Порту на жилье, которое называлось не социальное, но оно называлось жилье с контролируемой стоимостью, если условно это привести. Ну, то есть, да, что-то между социальным жильем и просто жильем. Ну, то есть какие-то инициативы происходят, но они, конечно, не настолько сильны, как раньше.
То есть, как бы, получается, что 57-го года не случилось?
Нет, но в целом, конечно, мне кажется, если говорить про экономическую сторону проекта, то мы работаем с чрезвычайно маленькими бюджетами, то есть, мне кажется, это тоже навык, который мы пытаемся освоить элементарно в плане выбора материала или в плане структуры здания. Ну, то есть это тоже как бы одно из ограничений, внутри которого мы работаем, внутри которого мы научились работать.
А сколько человек в бюро работает?
9, мне кажется, сейчас. 8-9.
Угу. Если у вас там строительный бум, то, наверное... И вообще, я так понимаю, что в Португалии как раз последние несколько лет экономический подъем. Был спад, а стал...
Мне кажется, в этом плане наш офис случился в очень удачный момент, потому что было большое количество проектов и была, так сказать, площадка для роста.
А вы отказываетесь от каких-нибудь проектов? К вам приходят, говорят, хочу виллу, а вы говорите, нет, мы виллы не делаем.
Мне кажется, если к нам приходят и говорят, что... К нам на самом деле приходят и говорят, что мы хотим вот именно вот этот дом, и, пожалуйста, постройте нам его один в один, и мне кажется, сначала это какая-то мягкая попытка спросить заказчика, почему этот дом, и предложить другие варианты, и так далее. Но иногда это действительно не работает. Иногда они говорят, что нет, я хочу вот этот дом, И мы говорим, ну нет, мы не можем вам построить этот дом.
Мы делаем такие стены.
Но изначально, мне кажется,
Такие.
мы пытаемся с каждым проектом работать в какой-то степени до тех пор, пока это возможно.
Здорово.
Если у кого-то есть вопросы, не стесняйтесь, задавайте. Все получили ответы.
Ну, ладно, я последний вопрос спрошу. А насколько у вас френдли обстановка? Мне кажется, вот в вашем бюро должно быть все время такое очень расслабленное какое-то из серии из бирюзовых компаний, не таких, а таких.
Мне кажется, у нас действительно очень расслаблено, но бывают дни, когда, не знаю, большой стресс у кого-то или у всех, или мы не успеваем, или что-то случилось. Ну, то есть все, конечно, мне кажется, приятно и довольно свободно в плане, не знаю, рабочего графика или чего-то такого. Но, с другой стороны, мне кажется, мы нормальный офис, ну, то есть все как полагается.
В плане обсуждения идей и концепций, то есть могут ли все свободно там высказываться и как-то что-то предлагать?
Конечно. Но мне кажется, опять же, раньше, наверное, это было более просто, потому что сейчас каждый, наверное, занят своим проектом, и не всегда получается там всем собраться и все вместе обсудить. Но, опять же, мы стараемся это делать почаще. Ну, то есть, да, зависит от работы, зависит от того, что происходит.
Завершая, наверное, на самом деле очень круто, что вы пришли. И очень здорово даже, несмотря на, в общем, всю эту печальную ситуацию в мире, то, что мы имеем возможность общаться с людьми по всему миру. Вот у нас друзья из Лондона там делали до этого лекцию. Там, вот теперь вы пришли. И здорово, что так вот открыто все это происходит, потому что мы...
Из Германии тоже.
Разумеется, да. Я хотел сказать, что просто на самом деле очень здорово то, что мир открывается разными гранями, и то, что есть люди, которые вполне легко, вот так вот, как вы, могут прийти и рассказать про то, что они делают. Это очень здорово. И я думаю, что это очень полезно, на самом деле, для общего развития всех. И завершая, хочется спросить все-таки, там очень хороший такой был момент в одной из лекций, которую я, очевидно, смотрел перед тем, как готовился, значит, соответственно, к мероприятию. Fun или serious?
Мне кажется, наверное, у нас все еще не получается быть до конца серьезными, но опять же, не знаю, мы стараемся. И, наверное, если вы спросите Филиппа, который ходит на встречу в муниципалитет и который разговаривает с клиентом, наверное, у него фан совсем провал. Но мне кажется, поскольку я работаю много например, с концептуальной частью проекта, мне все еще весело. Но мне кажется, это, опять же, это неизбежная часть каждой практики. Есть веселый момент, и есть момент, когда нужно, не знаю, разложить плитку или посчитать все материалы и заполнить их в Excel. Это все очень важно и нужно.
И есть момент, когда вы помещаете вишенку там сверху.
Да-да-да.
Ура, я разложил плитку!
Спасибо большое.
Спасибо вам.
Спасибо
всем за то, что пришли. Я напоминаю, что запись этой лекции будет у нас на канале. И, собственно, приходите еще, подписывайтесь, нажимайте на колокольчик. Все вот это вот. Спасибо большое. Напоминаю, что у нас сегодня была Лера Самович из FALA Atelier. Это, как вы теперь знаете, прекрасная португальская компания, которая делает такие разные дома. Полосочку и с вишенкой. Вот, рок-н-ролл. Пока.
Спасибо.
Спасибо вам.
Счастливо.
Пока-пока.
Спасибо.